Hey everybody, I'm Sam from Samayara's Den, and today I wanted to do a video on how to go about making your very own bread flour when you're baking bread or any other baked item that requires bread flour. Now, living in India, one of the challenges we've had is getting our hands on some really good bread flour in the market because it's really expensive. And the fact of the matter is, pretty much most of the recipes that we looked up when we started out baking required bread flour in the recipe. But what they also used to say was, if you don't find any bread flour, just reach for all-purpose flour. Well, let me tell you something, that is absolute lies. I'll tell you why. The key difference between all-purpose flour and bread flour is the amount of gluten protein present in it. Now, your regular, all-purpose flour that you find in supermarkets typically has between 7% to 9% of gluten protein in it, while your bread flours have a much stronger gluten content, typically between 10% to 14% of gluten protein. And that's really what results in that lovely stretchy pockets that you get when you bake bread with good bread flour. Okay, so fast track to, the situation over here in India when we started baking for the first time and we looked up bread flour online, because you don't really get bread flour in supermarkets except a really few high posh supermarkets. I can only think of one place in Hyderabad which stocks bread flour, and that's Q-Mart. You don't find it in any other supermarkets like your Ratnadeeps or your Ganshams or Vijitas. But anyway, so looking up bread flour online, it was quite expensive, typically between 350 rupees to 400 rupees for a kilo of bread flour. That's 2 pounds of bread flour. That translates to roughly around $5 for a kilo of bread flour. And when you compare that to all-purpose flour, you get all-purpose flour a kilo for about 40 rupees. That's roughly 50 cents. And that's a huge difference, right? 50 cents versus $5. And when you also take purchase parity into account, that's a lot of money for just a kilo of bread flour, which is probably going to get done like that, right? So I looked up how to make bread flour at home, and it's really not that difficult. Essentially, for every cup of all-purpose flour that you take, you need to scoop out about 4 grams and add 4 grams of Vital Wheat Gluten. Now, what is this Vital Wheat Gluten and where do you find it? This again is not really something you'd find in your everyday supermarket. We pick up Vital Wheat Gluten powder from New Arif Lamold in Madhapur in Hyderabad. But really, any wholesale baking supply store will stock gluten powder for you, and you can go and pick it up from there. Now, the one we get costs around 250 rupees for a kilo of Vital Wheat Gluten powder. You can also buy it online, but it's a tad bit more expensive over there. So if you can, make a trip down to your local baking supply store, they should probably stock this for you, and you can pick it up from there. Talking a little bit about how you go about making it. For every cup of all-purpose flour, you scoop out around 1.5 teaspoons or around 4 grams of flour out of it. And then you add 1.5 teaspoons of Vital Wheat Gluten powder. Now, I do have some over here. This is how we store it in this jar. And when you think about how much it costs to make bread flour at home, it's really not a lot. It's probably roughly around 50 rupees, which is again, little over 50 cents for a kilo of bread flour versus buying it from the store for 350 to 400 rupees. That's saving a lot of money over there. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly demonstrate how I go about making it in this bowl that I have over here. So let's switch to the camera. I've got my 1 single cup of all-purpose flour. What I also wanted to do was actually weigh this out for you so that you can actually see how much each of this weighs. So let me add my 1 cup of all-purpose flour into this bowl. So that's about 151 grams. So typically a single cup of flour is about 150 grams. Keep that in mind. All right, so now I've got my half teaspoon measure over here. All right, I've got my half teaspoon measure. I'm going to scoop out 1.5 teaspoons. So that's 3 of these, right? So this is 1, 2, and 3. So that leaves me with 146 grams over here. So that's typically 4 to 5 grams of all-purpose flour that I've taken out. The next thing I'm going to do is take my Vital Wheat Gluten, and I'm going to take the exact same amount of gluten. So that's 1.5 teaspoons of Vital Wheat Gluten. So 1, that's 2, that's 3. Amazing. All right, there we have it, folks. Now, all you need to do is mix this up. This is around 150 grams, which we're back to again. So all we need to do now is mix this up. We're at 150 grams. I'm just gonna switch this off and put this aside. And I'm gonna mix my all-purpose flour with my Vital Wheat Gluten powder to make bread flour. It's as simple as that. So there you have it, folks. A simple tutorial on how to make bread flour. I really hope you'll enjoyed this. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and drop in your comments on when you try this out. I'm very positive that the kind of bread that you bake when you use bread flour will be much, much better than how it would turn out typically if you'd use your regular all-purpose flour. Until next time, I'm Sam for Samyara's Den. Cheerio!